Hey, welcome back to Bullpen Sessions. I am excited this week to sit down with Mike O'Connor. And I paused because I'm trying to figure out how I want to introduce this guy, because this one speaks to my heart. Not only is he a former Major League Baseball pitcher, he too is also in the insurance business. And so Mike spent the early half of his career in professional sports, professional baseball, pitching for the Washington Nationals, also spending time in the Mets, Royals, Padres, Twins, and Yankees organization. But Mike had his call-up. Mike had his chance to pitch at the major league level with the Washington Nationals. That call-up came back in 2006, which we'll talk about. And I'm just excited to have Mike on because now he has transitioned into phase 2 of his career, which is in the insurance industry, just like me. So with that being said, I am going to bring Mike on. Mike, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, Andy.
You bet, man. Welcome to Bullpen Sessions. So let's just let's level set. Obviously we're going to talk about your career with the Washington Nationals at the professional level. Go back to being a kid. I know you were born in Dallas, right?
Correct.
But grew up in Baltimore?
Yeah, I grew up outside of Baltimore in Ellicott City, and went to high school in Baltimore at Mount St. Joe.
Okay. Growing up, was baseball something you were always passionate about?
I think sports in general is something that I, spent a lot of time with. I mean, growing up, soccer, basketball, swimming, baseball, and then, as I got into high school, it, kind of happened that, I realized basketball probably wasn't, in my future, and really, those were the two, basketball and baseball were really the two sports that I loved the most, and so I really went all in on baseball in high school, and wanted to play in college, and ended up going to GW to play.
Okay. George, for those that don't know what GW is, we're talking George Washington, which is right in DC, correct?
Correct.
Awesome.
Right near the White House.
Did you, you grew up an Orioles fan?
I did. Yeah. Cause at the time, the Orioles were the only team around here, and, grew up, they had some really good teams back then with, Cal Ripken Jr., Robbie Alomar, Mike Mussina, those guys. So we grew up a huge Oriole fan, and still follow them a little bit.
Who was your favorite player growing up, if you had to pick one?
I was all, pitching was really my thing in baseball. I mean, growing up, and when we came from Texas, we still kind of followed the Rangers. Nolan Ryan was with the Rangers. He was kind of the guy. Randy Johnson was probably right behind him. Big left-handed pitcher, and then Mike Mussina and Cal Ripken were kind of the two local guys that I really followed.
I have to share this. This was an exciting moment for me when I was pitching at UWM. Actually, this will be hit very close to home for you. My pitching coach was Todd Froworth. So, and you probably remember Froworth. He was a middle reliever for the Baltimore Orioles, submarine pitcher. And this was still back when it was one of the last years the Brewers were in the American League, and so they were playing the Orioles. The Orioles were in town, and Mussina actually came to our practice and worked with all the pitchers in the bullpen. That was it was a really fun experience to be able to work with him, because his mind was magical.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I definitely remember Todd Froworth. They would play the Yellow Submarine or something when he came out. So definitely remember him well. So that's cool.
So let's talk about, you go to Mount St. Joe's, just outside of Baltimore. Was there a point, when you were in high school where you remember that, okay, I have the ability to pitch at the next level. I have the ability to pitch in college?
Yeah, I think, when I was, 14, 15, I was, doing really well pitching wise, and, played with a really good team. We ended up winning the double ABC World Series when I was 14, and, played with some really good players. Then dealt with some injuries during high school, just kind of, shoulder issues. And then my senior year, everything kind of came together, and was hoping to play Division I. I was really focused on that, was my goal, and, kind of held out till late, and things were able to come together my senior year. And that worked out for me. But yeah, I played with a lot of really good players, and, kind of seeing where they were at. I graduated high school with Mark Teixeira, who was a potential first-round pick out of high school, and seeing where he was at, and some of the other guys, just trying to keep up with the other top players around me, I think was something that was really, really helpful for me.
He ended up going to Georgia Tech, right?
Correct. Yeah, he ended up not signing out of high school and went to Georgia Tech for 3 years.
So you end up choosing George Washington, which is in the Atlantic 10. Did you have any other offers coming out of high school?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple other local schools who were interested. University of Maryland was pretty interested at that time. Their program was, dealing with some issues. They weren't the program they are now. And Towson and William and Mary was also like the other school that was interested. So that was kind of my top four. And then there's some other schools in the area that I, was interested in as well.
Well, here's what I love about, you go to George Washington and correct me if I'm wrong, Atlantic 10, I think basketball, right? There's some schools in the Atlantic 10 that often are finding themselves ranked at the top 25. When it comes to baseball, was the Atlantic 10 more of a mid-major conference? Like I pitched in the Horizon League with University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee.
Yeah, I would say, there'd be a handful of guys drafted each year out of that conference from each team. I mean, at the time, Virginia Tech, when I first got there, Virginia Tech was still in the conference. University of Richmond. I mean, it has shifted. Obviously, the conference has shifted like all of the conferences have the last few years. But I mean, it's not a baseball powerhouse. I mean, a lot of the schools were in the Northeast. So yeah, definitely more of a basketball first conference for sure.
Quick piece of advice I want you to give, because some of the listeners I think are younger athletes, which is great because this is guys like you and I can have a big impact on them. If there's a pitcher out there, a baseball player, doesn't matter what position I guess they are, and they're not getting the offers from the big time schools, what advice would you give them? Because I think you went to George Washington, didn't prevent you from getting drafted. You see so many guys going to smaller college programs. And what I love about baseball is that doesn't mean anything when it comes to having that chance to play at the next level. What advice would you give a guy like that who may not be getting those high D1 offers right now?
I would just focus, on finding somewhere that's a fit academically in a place where you can play, right? I mean, I think the thing that really helped me going to George Washington, I was able to, throw like 50 innings my freshman year, which, was a decent amount. And I mean, I got my butt kicked a lot, but it ended up really paying dividends. The second half of my college career, those innings that I was able to get early on, and I think that was really important. And the school offered what I wanted academically as well. So I think that's always my advice. I mean, a lot of guys get caught up and you go into the Power 5 type conference. These big schools down in the South. With the top-notch facilities and all that. But at the end of the day, you want to find somewhere where you can get on that field and get a chance to compete.
I'm glad you said that, because I do see that a lot where these kids want to go where the spotlight is, and then they sit for 3 or 4 years versus having that. If you had gone down a level or gone to a mid-major versus high major, you would have had the chance to play more. And in your story too, you can't slack off on the academic side at George Washington.
Not too much,
because you're not going to find yourself eligible on the sports field for sure. Okay, so at George Washington, Mike, was there a point where you now said, okay, I think there's actually an opportunity to get to the next level here? So not only have I succeeded at the Division I NCAA level, I think there's a chance that my next opportunity could come at the professional level.
Yeah, I mean, I think my junior year started to have some really good success in college. I mean, my first 2 years didn't have a lot of success. So, I mean, I was just trying to establish myself as somebody who could pitch on our pitching staff, right, at GW. And then, my second, probably the summer that I went to Ohio was kind of where it was like, oh man, I could probably make something of this. Finally got bigger, stronger, started throwing harder instead of throwing in the mid 80s, was, high 80s, close to 90. And I think that physical development was really, the key for me in college.
Awesome. Was there anything you did, for some people, it's just a matter of growing into their body and the skills kind of develop along those lines. When you went and spent those summers playing in summer leagues in Ohio, was there anything you worked on specifically where you're like, it clicked and that's what helped you throw harder, mechanics, whatever it was?
I don't know if it was anything mechanical. I mean, there's some tweaks, people helped me with along the way, some small things that I think added up, but a lot of it was just getting, bigger and stronger, and just, making that part of my routine, lifting and running and doing all that stuff throughout the year that I think, over time really allowed me to be successful.
So what you're telling me, Mike, is you have to put the work in off the field when no one's watching.
Definitely.
Most of us don't get by on natural talent alone. So I think it's so important. I think, you can't replace the amount of work that goes into just being successful on the mound for 9 innings. It's people see the on the field stuff. They don't see all the work that's going in off the field. So here you are, you get drafted, right? 7th round by the Washington Nationals. Were they still the Expos at that time? Or were they the Nationals?
It was. I got drafted by the Montreal Expos. So whenever I do baseball camps, tell kids they don't even know who that is. So it really ages me. So that's good.
But here's the cool thing: do you still have some Expos gear?
I have some jackets and bags and stuff up in my attic. So yeah, I definitely have a couple things.
Those things are worth a lot now because the logo doesn't even exist anymore, right? What was life like? I think people again see the athletes at the major league level. If you were to give somebody in a minute or two a summary of what life is like at the minor leagues, what would you say?
I think it's a grind, right? I mean, and it's every day. You really have to love baseball to get through it. I mean, starting off, you don't play at the best facilities. I know some of that's changed the last 20 years, but when I got drafted in 2002, I went and played for the Vermont Expos, and it was, we played at the Vermont University baseball field. I mean, they had a good fan base, but it was an much older facility, and you travel around from city to city and play a game pretty much every night, and just getting used to that lifestyle and what it takes to be able to prepare yourself to perform at that level.
A high school buddy of mine actually played in Vermont just a year or two ahead of you. Nice. He was drafted in the Expos organization. I remember seeing his pictures and stuff from Vermont. Okay, so you're in the minor leagues, you're traveling around. I think that's one thing people don't understand. Like you said, the grind that goes into this. Did you have a rapid ascent to AA and AAA, or did you find that it was kind of just a matter of consistency and patience, that if you just focused on what you needed to do every day, every inning, that the rest would take care of itself? Kind of describe your journey through minor leagues individually, specifically you. Yeah,
I mean, I had a decent first short season, and went to Savannah. They wanted me to make some changes in how I pitched, and that kind of led to me losing my best pitch that I got drafted because of my curveball slider. So that kind of made things tough. And I know going into my 4th season in pro ball, it's kind of like I'm just going back to what works. I went home and just kind of went back to trying to figure out how I could get my curveball back, and went into spring training in 2005, hoping just to make a team, because had a pretty good decent first half of the year in 2004, and then kind of struggled, kind of ran out of innings, and they kind of put me in a bad position. But they don't really care at the end of the year. They just look at your numbers and where things fall at the end of the year. But was fortunate, the Nationals Expos system at that time was really searching for prospects, so they were able to hang with me a little while. They saw some potential, and then I was able to kind of figure out my curveball again in high A that I repeated in 2005, and ended up really getting myself on track the second half of 2005, and got ended up winning the minor league pitcher of the year for the whole organization.
Oh, wow.
After having a terrible start to the season. I mean, a lot of it was just they really made me kind of I was throwing a lot of fastball changeups, and then they wanted me to be a 4-pitch pitcher, start throwing more curveballs, start throwing a cutter, slider. So really challenging, what I was doing, and that I definitely took some growing pains, but that was really what put me on track to end up actually getting called up to the big leagues in 2006. So it was, a really, slow start to my pro career, and then things happened really quickly. In 2006, I went from finishing the year in 2005 in high A to spring training. The end of spring training, they told me I'm going to AAA in New Orleans. I didn't go to AA. And then, I went to New Orleans. They had a bunch of injuries on the major league pitching staff. And, I was pitching well and was kind of on the radar with the season before in spring training. And, they called me up to pitch a game in late April against the Cardinals to make my debut.
Let's go there. So number one, I want to ask before we forget, were they the Savannah Bananas yet?
No. It's
Okay.
the sand gnats.
Okay. If anybody has ever taken a look, I forget the guy who owns the Bananas now. What he has done to the Savannah team from a marketing perspective is like nothing short of genius. But anyways, so okay, let's go to April 27th, 2006. Right? What is that feeling like? Because we've all seen it in the movies when you get the call up. Do you remember where you were? What were you doing when they came to you and said, Mike, the Nationals need you. You're going to St. Louis.
I was in New Orleans. We had the next day off. I was, in between starts, and I think I was going out to dinner and probably about to have a night of fun with some of the guys in AAA. And the pitching coach at the time was Steve McCaddy. He pitched a long time for the Oakland A's, and he called me and said, "Get out of there. You're going up to the big leagues." And call your parents, call everybody. It's just like kind of a surreal moment.
Yeah.
We had the day off the next day, and I went to the field, got all my stuff, played catch with I think one of the guys that worked in the front office because I wanted to make sure I threw the day before I started, and got all my stuff and left the next morning to go to, or that afternoon to go to St. Louis. So pretty surreal moment.
Was your body, I could imagine your body being numb and you're just almost like you're floating on air.
Yeah, definitely very nervous. I mean, I don't know. It's something you've worked towards forever and you're getting this chance to do it. And I don't know, just kind of a surreal moment. I don't know, just walking to the hotel and met a couple of the guys when I got there. The next day, walk into the manager's office and Frank Robinson, Hall of Famer with the Orioles. And, I'd briefly met him in spring training before, but never in this capacity where he even knew who I was, and talked to him for a minute, more listened to him. But, having just that whole experience was surreal for sure.
For somebody who's never played minor league baseball, pro baseball, tell them what that feeling is like. I think one thing for me that was kind of weird. I remember I got promoted mid-season, literally right after a game from Helena to Ogden. And it's like, here's your stuff, get on a plane. You're going to Ogden. Your host parents back in Helena are going to mail you your clothes. Like, I didn't even give a chance to say goodbye to my host family because we were on the road. And so often, like on both sides, when you get promoted or somebody gets cut and released, like they're gone. What is that like? Never knowing when the call up or the demotion is going to come, because it's like you could be here tomorrow and somewhere else the next day.
I think it's just a crazy business, right? I mean, the second half of my career, I kind of bounced around as a AAA player with a bunch of different organizations, and then I still remember the first spring training when you see all these guys cleaning out their lockers to get released and things like that, and it's just a really tough business, right? I mean, there's so many people that want to do it, and at the end of the day, the team has to make decisions who they think are the players that can help them, and it's really a business at the end of the day.
So let's talk about this. So you get called up. I assume you pitched right away. They probably called you up to pitch.
Yeah.
Do you remember who the first batter was for the Cardinals that you faced?
Yeah, so I faced David Eckstein was the first batter. He was the leadoff hitter for the Cardinals. His brother Rick was actually our hitting coach in AAA at the time. So and he's one of the best guys in the world. So and then met David the next day, walking into the stadium, talked to him for a few minutes. Just couldn't be a nicer guy, but walked him on 4 pitches to start off the game there. So a little bit of nerves there, but once I got an out on the second hitter, I think the hitter swung at like a 2-0 pitch and popped up. Things kind of calmed down a little bit.
Yeah, and that's probably that moment you realized, okay, I belong. I'm here. It just got real.
Yeah, you can breathe a little bit, right? I think as a pitcher, when you're starting a game, you just want to get that first strike, that first out.
Yep.
And you can things kind of slow down from there.
And if anybody has never heard of David Eckstein, that's all. You talk about a great story of somebody who beat the odds. What was he, 5'6", 5'7"?
Yeah, he's not a big guy. Doesn't run fast. Not much of an arm.
Yeah.
Played at shortstop in the big leagues.
Had one hell of a career.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So okay, so you last a couple seasons here with the Nationals, and then I know you spent time with the Padres, with the Mets, with the Yankees, with the Twins. Was there a point in your do you remember that moment where you're like, okay, I don't know, this may be it. this may be the end of this chapter in professional baseball. Take us to that moment. What were you going through mentally at that time?
Yeah, there's a lot of those moments. So I mean, several years during my career, injuries, different things happen. Got to the big leagues in 2006, ended up having elbow surgery after the season, which ended up being more serious than they thought. Missed most of 2007, came back and pitched in Double-A and just had nothing, like no velocity, nothing, no breaking ball or anything, and was able to slowly get back in shape. And then by 2008, things kind of came back to normal. Had a really good year in 2008, and had a crazy injury to end that season where I got hit in the face with a ball and broke my orbital bone and nose. And that kind of really messed things up with the Nationals, where I probably would have got an opportunity to start some games. In 2009, I came back with the Nats, and they had really kind of changed the GM changed, and they brought in a lot of new people, and things really shifted. They were looking to really turn the franchise around, and obviously that's worked out for them. But I was had some injuries that year, and I tried to pitch through them, and that was probably the worst decision of my career, and it really made things tough. 2009, I played with a bunch of teams. I played Double-A with the Nats, Triple-A. Got traded to the Padres, went over there. Things didn't work out over there. Got released, played independent ball for about 3 or 4 weeks, started to throw better while I was there, and then went to finish the season with the Royals in AAA, and started off okay, and then had some really, really tough outings there to end the season. So that end of that year, I was like, man, is this it or what? And then ended up going to pitch down in Venezuela, and kind of was able to, just work on things, and ended up getting released while I was there after 6 weeks, and then just went home and just worked out, and really just was like, all right, this is it, and then got myself back in shape, was healthy, went to spring training, was fortunate, somebody I knew the assistant GM with the Mets, and they were willing to bring me to spring training. There were some people I knew over there from the Nationals that were in the front office too, and they brought me in as somebody they could bring to spring training, and was healthy, pitched really well, and made the AAA team, and was able to get myself back on the radar that year. Had a really strong year in 2010, and then got called up briefly with them in 2011 for about 5 weeks. So yeah, definitely. It's a great, you go from the penthouse to the outhouse really quick, right?
And right back. You can go right back too.
So it's crazy.
And to your point, you have no control. That orbital bone injury, like who knows where you would have gone had you not had that injury, right? Like there's so many things that are out of your control. Well, I know your time, you don't have a ton of time today, but let's end the episode with some value around that. The thing about sports people don't realize is when that chapter's over, you're still in your 20s, maybe early 30s. Like you have a lot of life left. What was that transition like for you to, let's call it the real world? Was that a tough transition, or were you able to make that pretty easily?
No, it was really tough. Baseball had been a huge part of my life. That had been like all consuming for all 12 years that I played professionally. I thought things would be much easier to transition to the next thing. And just, have my degree in finance from GW, but it was just really hard to figure out what that next thing was. All of a sudden I went from doing, the one thing that I loved for a long time, and you got to figure out that next thing. And, I had no idea what that was for about 2 years. So it was really a tough time in my life. But I think, once I kind of, decided that I really wanted to try something outside of baseball, that things started to become more clear to me what I wanted to do, and kind of honed in on a few industries with the help of a career transition program with Major League Baseball. They helped me kind of put together a framework for a plan that kind of got me on the right track. It was just definitely a tough thing to do, though, to kind of reinvent yourself in your early 30s after you've had success in something, and then really having to kind of start back over at the bottom again.
Well, and here you are, with a successful insurance career. I love the fact, you're niching, you're talking to, providing risk advising to current and former pro athletes. I think this is such a cool opportunity. Is there anything right now when you're in the day-to-day battle of insurance and working with clients and advisor or prospects, where you resort back to things you learned from baseball that you now put into play in the business world?
Yeah, I mean, I think, being in sales, I think a lot of the things, just having that ability to just keep getting up over and over again, I think is huge, right? I mean, and, having that team mentality where you're always trying to add value to your clients and prospects, I think is something that, I think is important in the way that I try to, differentiate myself in an industry where it's hard to do that. But no, I think just the work ethic and dedication to something that I learned through baseball and sports is, something that I always take with me anywhere I go. And I think the insurance, it's not, it's not playing baseball, but it's still the same, in thing, trying to help your team win each day. Right. So
Yeah.
I think a lot of that and being part of that, I think is allowed me to kind of, fill that competitive void that you have when you've played sports for a long time. And I've enjoyed, the first couple of years in this business were really tough, and I'm going on year 5 here. So it's, gotten better each year, kind of learning a new language almost. And, it's been a good career for me, and, something that, I think a lot of athletes would do well in.
Well, and I think a lot of athletes do well in sales because it's a game of consistency and putting in the work when no one's watching. And, for your early years in the insurance were like going through the minor leagues, right? Like here you are in year 5 and it's really starting to grow, but you got to spend the time on the grind and in the minors, building that business. So I know you got a couple minutes left. Let's wrap up here. You ready for some quick pitch, some rapid fire? Okay. I'm going to ask you 6 questions. Just give me whatever pops off your head. This gives people a chance to know Mike a little more here before we wrap up. Number 1, toughest batter you ever faced?
Miguel Cabrera.
Ooh, that's a good one. Yes, he would be. I don't know what you can throw that guy that he might not hit out of the park. Best road stadium in the majors you've ever pitched in or to pitch in?
I like Wrigley Stadium.
Any reason why?
Just the history.
Okay.
So I think that the older parks definitely, thinking that, Babe Ruth and all these guys played in the stadium it's just crazy.
Okay, awesome. Best minor league stadium you ever pitched in? Or favorite crowd, favorite fans from the minors?
I always liked Toledo.
Okay.
For AAA with the Tigers. Really cool downtown, old stadium right in the middle. So
awesome.
I always like going there.
Awesome. True or false? You're a lefty. You're a southpaw. Most lefties balk with their pickoff move.
False.
Oh, come on. All right, 2 more questions and I'll let you go. Best game manager you've ever pitched to? Catcher. Best catcher, best game manager, pitch caller you've ever thrown to?
I pitched to some really good catchers during my career. Probably the one that every time I shook him off, I think I gave up a hit with the Yankees. One of my last, Francisco Cervelli.
Ooh, nice. And he just retired recently, didn't he?
He did just retire. He's a really smart guy, and the way he called a game, he kind of was one step ahead of the awesome. Batters consistently.
Yep, that's why catchers make great managers. Last question. You got 1 pitch, close the game out. What are you going with?
Not my fastball.
I like that. Well, Mike, last piece of advice. If there's an athlete listening in, looking to transition into college ball, or maybe their college career's coming over, or their pro career's about to end, or a business executive whose transition is coming either to retirement, a new gig, whatever that might be, any advice you'd give them?
Just, as far as transition, I think everybody's got their own, mindset, and just try to figure out what you want to do next. And it's definitely a process, but I think, taking the time to figure that out, I think can really make sure that you can stay in one place for a while instead of jumping around.
I like that, because I know when I got released, I think I jumped too fast into the business world when I should have taken my time and maybe played some independent ball or enjoyed life a little bit at such a young age. So I appreciate that. That means a lot to me. So Mike, appreciate your time, man. I know you're busy and you got to run, but I really appreciate this. I think a lot of young athletes, a lot of business professionals are going to take a lot from this, because you're a journeyman of consistency, patience, and you've been to the top, and you're about to go to the top again in a different sector of in the insurance industry. So thank you one more time. If somebody wanted to reach out to you, Mike, quickly, how can they get in touch with you?
LinkedIn's probably the easiest way. Mike O'Connor on LinkedIn or Facebook. I guess.
Awesome. And you'll see Mike's profile picture of an image of him with the Nationals on the mound. So Mike, thank you. Guys listening in, I hope you took a lot of notes. Mike's got a great story. And as I always say, you know what happens when clarity and confidence collide? Action happens. Go make it happen today.
Thanks, Andy.